Hi, you're listening to Sharing Values Across Borders, a podcast featuring Christoph Stückelberger as he recounts the first 20 years of the Globethics story. Did you ever feel this huge risk that you're exposing yourself to constant scrutiny over upholding these values, over failures of integrity, for, kind of this relentless, easy critique of hypocrisy or shortcoming and these kind of things?
Sure. I mean, that is a risk when you put values on your flag. And I remember when I asked big companies in the first 10 years when we had a focus on value-driven enterprises, some big companies, without naming them, I mean, I can for you, Nestle was one of them, for example. When I approached them, L'Oreal and others, to support financial conference, an international conference, and not more than once, some of these companies said, it's wonderful what you do, but if we sponsor an ethics conference, they may say, these companies just try to do whitewashing, and so it's a risk for us to be involved in ethics in a visible way. Mm-hmm. Of course, we need ethics and we want to be involved, but if we put it on our flag or sponsorship, you see, this was really an issue. Now, for myself, I don't say I escape, but my answer is the following. I think it's very important to claim that we need people with integrity in our network. And I think I can say over the 20 years, we are blessed that we had such a cloud of people with integrity. But that's only half of the answer. The other is that we always know that everybody of us can fail. Mm-hmm. There's no guarantee. But there is two answers. One is, and that is, I cannot separate it from my own faith. One is to acknowledge, and that's my anthropology, to acknowledge that we all remain humans. And even saints remain humans. That means, that's my Protestant view of saints. No human being is without failure, even not the Pope. That means we can recognize that we do not need to be perfect. Mm-hmm. That's very key for our network. We are all humans and we are looking for integrity, but there is no guarantee that we fail. And the second part of the answer is then, but when we fail, we have a community to help us to overcome it, either to be punished by law if it's really a criminal act, or to be corrected, or to, so we are not alone. So the networking part is, I don't fear to say we are looking for integrity, but it does not mean that we have not our own weaknesses and sometimes more than weaknesses. But we need mechanisms. That's why I work since 30 years now on anti-corruption issues. Mm-hmm. In business, in government, and now in churches and educational institutions. And there we need then sometimes to say, look, you are a rector or you are a dean, and or you are a professor exploiting your female students by giving credit for sex and all that stories. And there is a limit. And that is part of our efforts inside the network. As I said, we have really the blessing, and I don't say that some of in our network have their weaknesses. I don't say that. We are a community of humans who try the best. Mm-hmm. This sounds almost like preaching, but
it's all right.
I feel it, as I say.
I'm here for it. I don't mind. I could use a little grace. It's all right. But it seems to me that when you come to questions of integrity, that would be among the values that would be easiest to kind of relativize. For example, I come from Canada, and it's really important in Canada that we're polite and kind.
Yeah.
So I would never say to you, Christoph, that's a horrible sweater you're wearing.
Yeah.
You know, that's really ugly. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
But you come to Europe, and there's a lot of cultures that would find me dishonest and evasive.
Yeah.
And this kind of directness that I would find horrific in my native culture is completely unacceptable. You know, I would say, oh, I don't like your shirt, and you would be fine with it. You know, it seems to me that around issues of integrity that you quite quickly come to this kind of almost ethereal quality, you know, that it's like slippery in a way.
Yeah, it's a good example. You know, I developed over years, I think I can say I developed a kind of sense for integrity of people.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I came across again and again people who are so enthusiastic from the first second of, oh, great that you have these values, and I am really committed since decades, and I'm profoundly honest. And I said, why do you have to defend yourself before I ask something?
Right.
So you see.
Yeah, right.
Then
yeah.
Something must be wrong if a person has to defend already
Mm-hmm.
before I open my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this cultural respect, and that is what I mean with dignity and with respect, is really very key to have that understanding of integrity is not exactly the same in the cultures, and the cultural diversity, to respect the cultural diversity is very key. Without now accepting everything, we can defend all the wrongdoing by cultural differences.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can say, okay, in Arabic culture, beating your wife is for the culture, and revenge killing. I kill the other person because he killed somebody. Is the culture, you have to do it. Integrity means you have to kill the other person, otherwise you are not within your culture. Then I say, stop, this is a limit of my understanding of the other. So understanding the differences and respect does not mean to accept everything. That is very key. There are limits where we have to struggle for our understanding of values, but the majority of cases are not these extreme cases. The majority of cases is where we first have to understand, and there is a distinction between understanding and accepting. Mm-hmm. We have in mediation and peace efforts that we do often this methodology of first sitting on the chair of the other or walk in the shoe of the other. That means once you walk in the shoe of the other, you may better understand the other person, and then it's a qualified judgment and not a prejudice. Mm-hmm. When you say, no, this I cannot accept, or this I understand now better. So integrity is in fact a soft virtue which is not easy to understand, but I take an example, and I should do a bit more storytelling. So I was teaching in Kinshasa, Congo DRC, ethics courses, and the professor of ethics invited me to give a 1 week for 400 students, and at the end of one lecture, he came to the floor and said, students, I have to close this lesson with a remark. You know, Professor XYZ, I had to take this week the decision to dismiss him. He was a very famous and everybody loved him, this professor. And he stood in front of the 400 he said it's very painful, but this professor he had sexual abuse with a student and sex for marks, so gave her a mark for sex, and we discovered it, and I had to immediately dismiss him from his professorship. Students were looking like that because everybody knew that this is a praxis that was practiced by so many people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's added, the dean of this faculty added, and he was a close friend of mine. And it's painful to tell you that we have to dismiss this person. So that was an example, a very strong example of integrity. You dismiss somebody who is your friend, and you stand there. And the other example is I was giving a training on leadership training for professors in Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
In a big university, and we had about 400 professors on integrity leadership, and then in the break, the dean of the faculty came to me and said, "I have to share a story with you. What do you do in such a case?" I said, "Okay, I'm listening." She said, "I had a professorship open position, and I announced it. We had applications, and I decided as dean, this and this person will be elected. And then a close friend of mine, I know her since my childhood, she came to me very angry, and she said, 'I applied, and I'm your best friend, and you did not take me.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? It was clear for me that you will take me.' And the dean said, 'I'm very sorry, but you are an excellent person, but the other one was better.
Mm-hmm.
I had to take the best, and not the best friend, but the best qualified.' And then the dean almost cried and said, 'This was the end of my friendship since decades with this person.' So these are examples of strong integrity. You decide for values and not for personal interests.
But Christoph, I'm thinking you have your feet in many places in many worlds. We talk about academic examples now. You work a lot, civil society, NGO, but you also have alluded to work with corporations. Is there a different language about integrity in those different spaces? And is integrity really something quite different? Or is there something that kind of underpins integrity across the academic world, the corporate world, the civil society world? What do you think?
It's a good point. Yes, I try to adapt my language, not my values, but my language to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that is part, by the way, that I learned as a pastor. My first reflection when I prepared a sermon, I'm not preaching so much now, rarely, but the first reflection is always, what is my audience?
Mm-hmm.
Who is it? Is it old people, young people, rural people, city people, intellectuals, whatever. So I try to speak relationally.
Mm-hmm.
And that means, of course, we need to adapt our language while remaining authentic. So, for example, the language of ethics in business is on one hand understood, and on one hand they fear it because they feel always guilty before I open the mouth. Mm-hmm. Even the fact that I'm an ethicist is interesting, but I don't feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So in business, for example, risk management is a term everybody understands, and they want to manage risks because they don't want to they have to avoid risks. So I use more the language of avoiding risk. How can we reduce risks as part of risk management? But behind is, of course, the question of integrity.
Right.
Because lack of integrity is a high risk for a company.